Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. We're glad you're with us this morning. It's Friday, February 11th, 2022. Our agenda this morning, we'll start out with success stories. I know of two landings. One person's already put their information in the chat window. Congratulations. We'll hear from Mike in just a moment. Then we'll go have everybody put their 30-second reductions into the chat window. Then go to our committee reports, and then we'll do our main event, which today is talking all about background checks. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to open up the chat box, put your questions in the chat box. We also will use that for everybody to put their 30-second reductions in there so you can network with each other. I'll copy all that information out there. For those people who are watching on Facebook right now, thank you for joining us. Please, if you have any questions, put your comments in the question field, and we will get those questions answered for you. Please note this event is currently being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window do not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007 when the prior person who was leading it got a job, and I asked who wanted to take over. I think I scratched my face. He said, "Okay, Jeff, you're it." So I've been doing that ever since. In 2008, I launched a website called careerdfw.org to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I launched a second website, careerusa.org, to help those outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search that you may not know. It is available on Amazon, or you can get it directly from me. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. Well, we like to start the meeting off with good news. So Mike, why don't you unmute your mic and tell us your good news and your story.
Good morning, everyone. We talk on this website and all the websites I've been on about networking, and it does work. I talked to an old friend of mine, and he referred my name to a company. I did 2 on-site interviews, 3 phone interviews, and landed in 3 weeks. So it does work, and I appreciate everybody's patience and training that all you guys do.
So Mike, who are you going to be working for?
A small management company called Bradford Management.
Okay.
I've worked for all the big ones. This is a boutique firm that manages a bunch of smaller properties. So I'll be lead engineer for them.
Well,
it's
congratulations.
Quite a change.
Excuse me?
It's quite a change.
Yeah. So you said this happened like within 3 weeks, and it's because you just were talking with somebody.
Yeah, one of my old business contacts that I contacted after I got laid off. I got laid off the week before Christmas, and I just called everybody on my contact list and let them know. And he called me back 2 weeks later and said, "Call this gal," and boom.
Well, I mean,
it happened. Networking works.
That's the power. So if you had one thing to recommend to everybody, it would be network. Get out and
yes, sir.
Get out and call your contacts.
Get out and call your contacts. And I didn't hear from anybody for weeks. This all happened before COVID, right after Christmas and holidays. I didn't think anything would happen, but boom! Last night I got a contract to sign and starting Monday. So wow. I'm ready to go. Anxious to get back at it again.
Well, congratulations! Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us the last couple months, and congratulations on the job. And as I like to say, hopefully we'll never see you again here.
I hope so too. I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Our second person that I know about, and I don't see him on the call this morning. He emailed me this last night. This is Greg Braser. Many of you may recognize Greg. He's been with us on and off over the years. Jeff, I feel terrible for not reaching out months ago, and thanking you, Mark and Walt and the group, for your help. Thanks to all you've done for me and many others. I started working at Lidos on August 30th as a civil engineer working in the aviation field. totally different than my experience, but with government shutdown rumors for months, I still didn't know if I had the job long-term. Every Friday since I started work, though, I've had meetings or calls and got busy and forgot to call in. And he goes on a couple more paragraphs that, he just wants to, let people know he thought he was available to be with us this morning. And like I said, I don't see him on the call to share, how he landed his job. But he did say that if anybody is interested in a job at Leidos, L-E-I-D-O-S, please feel free to reach out to Greg and let him know that, you're interested in a job there, and he will see what he can do about getting your resume in. As you know, that if you have somebody who can push your resume inside of a company, you have a 50% chance of getting a phone call and being able to talk with somebody. So congratulations to Greg. Do we have any other landings? Any other good news people want to share? Going once, going twice? All right, we'll move on. Okay, what we'd like everybody to do now, and I know Bonnie's already done it, and I saw somebody else already did it. If you can, in the video chat box, please, in the Zoom chat box, please open it up and please put in your name, comma, phone number, comma, email address, comma, position you're looking for, comma, and 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. And then what I will do is this afternoon, I will get this all into an email. I will put this out so everybody can network with everybody else. I also will use this information to update the roster. So if you don't put any information in there, I won't know you're here, and I won't be able to update the roster if you're counting this for a workforce meeting or something you've got to turn in for Workforce Solutions. For those people watching on Facebook, if you put your personal information into the comment field, I will go and delete it right after the session's over. I'll copy it off and delete it off of Facebook so it doesn't hang out there forever and ever. So let's put 30 seconds on the clock for you to put your information in. All right, feel free to keep typing away. For those of you who type everything in from scratch, you can set up a notepad or a Word document, and you can have this stuff already sort of pre-built, have all sorts of different things in there. So all you have to do is cut and paste, copy, cut and paste, and just put it right in the chat box to make it easy for yourself. All right, it's time to hear about job and career fairs, training, and workshops going on. Good morning, Eldon.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. As Jeff said, I'm going to give you some information about career and job fairs and special workshops or events. The information that I'm about to present comes from the calendar that's found on the website careerdfw.org. You'll notice the various different colors on the calendar. They represent various topical areas into which the calendar has been divided. I go through these items fairly quickly, so if you hear something that catches your ear, I urge you to go to the calendar, click on the appropriate color tab, and then find the item you're looking for. You will normally find more information about what I've announced. You'll find links to go even further, and also links to be able to register for the event or participate. All right, having said that, this week's career and job fairs, unfortunately, nothing has been scheduled for the upcoming week in career and job fairs, but special workshops or events has a few more events on it than normal. Starting with finding out about Career DFW and careerusa.org and how to use them. Be held Monday, February 14th from 9 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. at the North Fort Worth Baptist Church at 5801 North I-35 West in Fort Worth. The presentation is being organized by the Fort Worth Career Search Network and is open to the public. And of course, our own Jeff Morris will be highlighting that event, telling you about the history and how to use careerdfw.org and careerusa.org and careerdfw.org. And there is a Zoom link that you can participate in that as well. Online, LinkedIn Tuesdays at 1 p.m., Tuesday, February 15th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Join Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, Ruth Lipsky, or Kurt Vondemutter for an online session on LinkedIn. This week's speaker is Terry Sullivan. So I would urge you, if you've never heard Terry talk about LinkedIn and how to use it from a marketing perspective, I strongly urge you to do so. There is a Zoom link and a Facebook link to participate in that event. Also online, the CSN Recruiter Roundup will be held Tuesday, February 15th from 6:45 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. And this is an event that features local area recruiters, including Gail Houston, Rick Showett, Abby Kohut, Paul Cameron, Rick Martinez, Andy Cook, Mary Leone, and Shelley Casino. These events are created to answer questions posed by the job seeker, as the events will be very inactive. Please join us, and there is a Zoom link to participate in that event. Also online, the Who You Know Career Transition Summit will be held February 16th from 10 a.m. to noon. There's a registration link for that event. You must register to attend. This event is hosted by one of our other local area recruiters, Foster Williams. And if you don't know Foster, I strongly urge you to get to know him. He is a great guy, and if you need help finding a job, I'm sure he can help you out. Also online, Interviewing Wednesdays at 1 p.m., Wednesday, February 16th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. You can participate as an observer in a pit crew interview each Wednesday. This is new for this year. And there is a Zoom link to participate in that, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that from coming up here shortly. Also online, Effective Resume Seminar will be held Thursday, February 17th from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Join us each month on the first and third Thursdays for the Effective Resume Seminar. This week's speaker is Aaron Alanitz, I think, if I pronounced that correctly. And there's a Zoom link and a Facebook link to participate. Also after that, on Resumes That Get You Hired webinar will be held Thursday, February 17th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. There's a registration link to participate in that event. And finally, online, the third Friday Internet of Things Special Interest Group Breakfast will be held Friday, February 18th from 7:40 a.m. to 9 a.m. There is a link to find out about that event. They've been online for a while, but perhaps in the near future, they'll be going back to meeting in person. If you're interested in the Internet of Things, I strongly urge you to participate in that event. It's hosted by Ed Hightower, who actually used to be a participant in this group as well. And that's it for this week.
Well, Eldon, I think the most important date that you forgot was Monday, February 14th. Don't forget about Valentine's Day.
Oh my goodness, Jeff, I am so sorry. And my wife is standing here in the kitchen with me, but I did get her a card. So I'm prepared. I just forgot to mention it, just so everybody knows.
All right, well, then we'll see Eldon next Friday because he'll make it through another Valentine's Day. All right.
Well, God willing, yes, thanks.
God willing.
All right, well, thank you very much, Eldon. All right, if you know somebody who just got laid off, if you know somebody who's unemployed, please tell them, and please share the information that's on CareerDFW and CareerUSA.org. I mean, when I put these websites together, I put them together to help people, and to be able to share the information, everything that I knew about job search and how to find help and how to, find resources both here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and around the country. So if you know somebody who's unemployed, if you know a networking group that doesn't know about CareerDFW, it's not talking about it, please, please, please share the information. All right, it's time to hear about the practice interview team. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. And there's my contact information in the chat window, my LinkedIn profile, and how to reach the pit crew by email or by phone. I want to say a few comments about Greg Braser because I'm so pleased he landed, and he practiced back in July, the first day of July, for this position with the FAA. And I remember it quite well because we spent quite a bit of time talking about why they would be interested in him, because he has no aviation experience. But what he does have, he considers himself an environmental engineer. Every big and little airport around the Dallas-Fort Worth area has a fuel farm, so they have to keep track of that. He's done roads and bridges in his background. There you go. There's a runway right there. And he's a hydrogeologist as well. So, you know, he had just the right mix of experience to make him very valuable to the FAA. So there you go. It's a pretty cool the way that comes together. It's a good, I think this opportunity, I don't know how he found it, but you know, if you have kind of a mix of experience, you need to go looking for companies that might need you. I mean, that's really the key thing is you find the match, informational interviews and all that that's involved. So good for Greg, very pleased for him. So the pit crew, probably the best way to find out how a pit crew works is come to observe a pit crew interview, which we now do on Wednesdays afternoons at 1 o'clock. But I'll describe it to you for you here. We usually have a panel interview with 3 interviewers, sometimes 2, but mostly 3. It's done on Zoom, takes about 45 minutes to do the interview. It's based on a job description that you provide, and of course your resume. And I need to get that a couple of days in advance because we study up, and a lot of candidates are surprised. I would say almost all the candidates are surprised at how well prepared the interviewers are for their interview. So sometimes the panelists will pick people that they want to interview because they have a similar background or worked at a similar company. So they come with unique experience, each one of them. And that's the key part of it. All the volunteers who provide the interviews have been hiring managers and have also been through job transition. So we're a very empathetic group. And we give you a chance to prove, you know, to convince us that you're the right person for the job that you submitted via the job description. Now, we encourage people to practice early and practice often. And practice early means you don't have to have a job in hand to practice. I would suspect something like 70 to 80% people who reach out to the pit crew already have an interview scheduled and they want to get prepared for it. But it'd be a lot better if you got prepared much further in advance. So just pick out a job description that looks good to you. Maybe it's a dream job, but it might be in another town, so you would never consider it really, but use it as a practice platform to, you know, help you come and convince the hiring managers that you're the right person for the job and then get the feedback afterwards. So continuing with how the meeting goes, the interview lasts about 45 minutes. There's anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes of discussion afterwards about the interview and your career choices. I mean, we cover a lot of ground often in those discussions. So that's a very valuable part of the interview as well. So when you're ready to practice, you need to send me that job description and your resume a couple of days in advance and pick out, if you would, your first and second choice for your practice. So there's 2 practices on Tuesday evening. There's 1 practice on Wednesday afternoon and 1 practice on Thursday afternoon. So those are the 4 slots that are available. And all that information is available on DallasPitCrew.com. You can search on DallasPitCrew.com, which actually redirects you to careerdfw.org, but you don't have to worry about that. DallasPitCrew.com. Let's see, one-way practice interviews are also available from the pit crew. Just send me an email and I'll set you up on that. What the pit crew offers, I give you the questions in advance, and you know, we're really just trying to help you get familiar with the tool. So it's 4 questions. It's pretty simple, straightforward, quick, and just reach out to me via email and I'll send you some more information about how that works. There's my contact information, and you can search on LinkedIn for, you know, the pit crew, Dallas Pit Crew, or my name, or you can just use the link that I provided in the chat window. That'll take you directly there. Please include a note when you request for us to LinkedIn, so I know that we met on the North Dallas Career Focus Group, and that's all it has to say. You know, we met on the North Dallas Career Focus Group. And 2 other things before I wrap up. I'm still looking for volunteers. Over the summertime, I had 10 panelists, 10 of my volunteers found jobs. And so I'm looking to build up the volunteer staff for the pit crew, and you get as much as you give out of this. And it looks like you can land pretty quickly as well. If you're participating, it improves your interviewing. and you don't have to make a big time commitment. Reach out to me by phone or by pit crew email, and I'll tell you some more about how to be a volunteer. And then the final thing is I am still coaching on how to answer the question, why did you leave your last position? So that's my specialty. That's the only question I focus on. And if you got a challenge there, something that's going to cause you to be anxious, then let's talk and we'll figure out how to answer that question and any questions that may be generated as a follow-up to your situation. So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mark. All right. Good morning, Walt. How are you doing today?
Well, good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. And I sometimes participate on the pit crew panel, and Mark is so generous. He gives me a 20% extra bonus for volunteering. So I'm not supposed to tell that to everybody that he shows favoritism. But nonetheless, what do I do? And who am I? Well, I'm a retired guy, and I worked for many years in the IT services industry, did a lot of different things in that career, but found myself without a job after 25 years and thought I'd be working in 3 months. And 15 months later, I figured out how to interview and how to do job searching. And it just took the long, hard path of just doing it wrong so many times until you can get it right. So looking around then to see what happened when I retired, I found the pit crew. It's a fantastic organization. Mark does a superb job of helping us with our interviewing skills and doing those practice interviews. And I thought, well, there's something else that can be done, and that is just how do we interview and what are we selling and how do we differentiate ourselves? And so I formed the Interview Success Workshop. It's also free, and it's paying attention to how we sell ourselves, defined by who we are, what we do, and how we help, and then how to differentiate ourselves, because Mark and I hear a lot of the same type of things over and over again in an interview, and we want to kind of differentiate ourselves and say it a little bit differently, a little bit way to be memorable in that fashion. You have to be registered to attend, so look me up on LinkedIn. You can get more information about the workshop there. Send me an email to my yahoo.com email address, which I reserved just for the workshop itself, and I'll get you registered. I typically have it on Tuesdays from 9 to 11 Central. Only take 1 to 2 people at a time. It's very informal. You can start over, you can pause, you can think. It's just a time for us to learn how to improve. So put on your learning hat and come. The worst thing that can happen is you figure out some things that might help you shorten your job search. So I recommend you come maybe once or twice. For me, you go 2 or 3 times to the pit crew with Mark and the team there. Then you'll find out how easy interviewing can be for real. It's much, much stronger to learn where it doesn't have any penalty than to learn by just going out on interviews and figuring out later that you should have done a better job. I'll say one thing, things can change in who you're talking to and what the question is and what's going on. And so one of the things I cover is the close. And I can remember when I got a job back in 1974, they cut my pay from my previous job 20%. This is not a close that I would recommend, but this is what I did. I pointed my finger at the hiring recruiter and said, all right, I'm going to take this, but I'm not going to let you stop me from having a successful career in this company. And he said, okay. That was exactly the kind of people they wanted, people that would do that kind of thing, have that energy, have that passion for the job and for that company. Anyway, so look me up, send me an email, and I'll be glad to help you. And we'll have a nice Zoom interview, and we'll call it Learning Without Squirming. A little poetic license in this one today. So the interview you can practice. You get better with each practice. Don't wait to start your practice. You'll get that job at lastest.
Thank you very much, Walt. All right, time to hear the career tip of the week. You can check it out on the Career DFW and Career USA website each week. There's a new tip every Saturday afternoon. Good morning, Liz.
Well, good morning, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. The current tip of the week is 4 ways to build career advancing connections in a hybrid era. The pandemic is no longer an excuse to ignore cultivating new and existing business relationships. So make 2022 the year you up and your networking game. This is by Denise Hampton. For years, I've been telling clients and friends that it takes a village to raise a career, and you need to build contacts across your industry, cultivate those relationships, and be as helpful to others as you want them to be to you. But in the pandemic era, your village has shrunk. Unsurprisingly, numerous studies show that with so many people working from home, we're interacting with fewer colleagues, both inside our companies and in other businesses across our industries. And without going into an office each day, we're less likely to meet new people outside of our departments. And with numerous conferences being canceled, something happening all over again now due to the Omicron variant. The same goes for the networking with people at companies we may want to work for someday. Even those people who choose to go to the office or attend in-person events when possible are still making fewer connections since many other people are staying home. To build your village in a hybrid era, you need to be organized and strategic. How to reach out. With fewer in-person opportunities such as water cooler conversations available, use LinkedIn connection requests, but do so wisely and judiciously. Find people whose career track records show that they're worked their way up the ranks in your field or in another field that interests you. Read posts or articles they've written. And if they've posted videos of a speech they gave or a panel they were a part of, watch one. Note something interesting about it, and then reach out simply saying you'd love to connect. Mail can work as well, but keep them brief and simple. Inside your company, use Slack or another internal messaging channel to reach out to people you haven't met yet. Say hello and ask if it might be okay to hit them up for advice sometime. Don't take it personally if people don't respond. Many are overwhelmed or very busy. Set numeric goals. As a rule, aim to make at least 10 quality new contacts every 3 months. This is my standard advice even outside of the pandemic, and it still applies now. Across a year, that's 40 new people you have in your corner. Unfortunately, when I ask clients and attendees to my workshops to write down the names of new contacts they've made in the past 3 months, most people can't even name 3. Many can't name 1. Make reaching out a part of your daily job. Aim to get 1 positive response by the end of each week. People are very busy, so most won't write back, and that's okay. Across a year, you'll have some weeks off and some weeks in which your efforts fail, so you'll end up at around 40. Pursue a 15-minute conversation. People remember you and feel more connected to you once they've spoken with you. Request a quick Zoom session with them just to get to know them and offer a few possible times. Limit the ask to 15 minutes, which most people will consider not too burdensome. If the person you're reaching out to is a manager and or plays any other role in hiring, you may get especially good responses if you call and ask for an informational interview. The Great Resignation has companies on the lookout for talent. And when you request an informational interview, you're indicating that even though you may not be looking for a job right now, you might be interested in joining their company someday. And they'll have a good reason to invest the time in hopes that you might one day make a good hire. Be genuine. Most importantly, be your authentic self. People can tell when someone is being fake or just trying to find a way to use them. Open up honestly about challenges you're having and listen intently when they share. Do your best to connect with them as people. Everyone is craving more human connection. Over time, tend the garden of your relationships. Stay in touch with people to whatever extent they seem to feel comfortable. Drop a note once in a while just to say hi. Comment on the social media posts of people in your network. At a time when many people are feeling exhausted and lonely, even little notes can make a big difference. With everything on your plate, you may feel that the last thing you need is yet another task. But building your network is a crucial investment in yourself. And I've been recruited for every job I've ever had by people with whom I built relationships. Your village sets you up for a stronger future. So good luck, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. It's going to be beautiful today.
Liz, thank you very, very much. And as you heard Mike say earlier, he built his network. He talked to people that he used to know, and that's how he got his connection to get his job. He starts on Monday. So networking. All right, coming up in just a couple minutes, Mike Coffey will be with us to talk about background checks. I do want to talk about our upcoming sessions. Next week, PJ Dunn will be with us to talk about Clifton Strengths and Core Clarity. If you haven't taken Cliff Strength Finders, if you haven't taken that test yet, you may want to do that so you have an idea. You don't have to have it for next Friday, but if you know what your strengths are, it may be helpful. And then on the 25th, Elizabeth Lyons will be back with us to talk about how to vet a company, how to decide if this is a company I want to work for. I have found a couple other articles since she was with us a couple weeks ago, and I will also update that handout that I have that I put out a few weeks ago about questions to ask a company that you're considering joining. All right, it's time for our main event. Mike Coffey is the president of Imperative Information Group. He also hosts a Good Morning HR podcast. He's also a prolific, but I haven't seen him much on Facebook lately, so I don't know what's going on there. So Mike, thank you for being with us. And I know you've been with us for many years, once a year over the last several years. So thank you for being with us, and I'll let you take it away and introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I think I'm off mute. Yeah, great. Hey, everybody. Well, Jeff, are you going to give me focus?
Yeah, you have control.
Okay.
You should
Okay,
be able to share your.
Okay, great. And so, as he said, I'm Mike Coffey. I'm a career HR person who, for the last 23 years now, has also owned a background screening company. I'm lucky that I get to spend most of my time working with employers around their employee selection process, and still do some investigations for employers on occasion. But all our revenue and what my employees do all day long is background checks. So we do employment-related background checks for employers, but we also do due diligence for businesses that just need to know about the people they're involving in their companies, whether it's a vendor or strategic partners or investors or things like that. So we do if it's people information that a business needs, that's kind of what we do. And that is a picture of me when I was much younger, and I like the day that you can tell my hair was thicker and actually darker there, but that's me. So why do employers even care about background checks or really your past history? And it's simply past behavior is one potential predictor of future behavior. And that's what behavioral event interviewing, and I'm sure in your interviewing courses, they prepare you for that. Tell me about a time where you had a conflict with a coworker. And then we just start to unpeel that onion more and more and dig deeper into it. But what an employer, when they're asking those questions, is looking for: how do you deal with conflict? And are you a peacemaker or are you a warrior? Or, how do you deal with these kind of issues? And trying to project that into how you'll operate in their environment. And likewise, that's what the background check is. Ideally, all the background check really is a verification of everything you've already told the employer, that the employer's already, when I'm coaching with employers, I work through the whole process, everything they should ask a candidate. There should be no surprises when the background check comes back if they've followed our process and done a really good job about it. But unfortunately, the truth is most hiring managers are horrible interviewers. Quite honestly, most HR people are not very good interviewers. And so they don't ask all the questions that would give them the insight that they really should have before they get as far as ordering a background check. And so sometimes we unfortunately are delivering background checks to employers and surprising them, but not because the applicant was dishonest, but because they never asked. And so I'll get a call from somebody, and an employer client, and they'll say, hey, why, we just get this background check back and it's got this, 5-year-old DWI. And, how do we handle that? And my first question is always, well, did you ask them about their criminal history? Well, yeah, we've got a criminal history question on our application. Well, what was the question? I don't know. Let me go dig it out. Don't even know what the question is. And they dig it out. And the person told them right there on the application about this 5-year-old DWI. And so there shouldn't be a surprise. And so I'm constantly reminding employers that they'd really do themselves and their candidates a favor if they were, paid attention to all the information they've already received from the candidate in the application process, and followed up with that during the interview. But fortunately for us, even if they ask all those questions, a certain percentage of candidates out there are just not honest. And I'd be out of work if all the applicants were honest out there. So my kids' orthodontia and the 2 colleges I'm paying for are very appreciative of those dishonest candidates. So when we think about background check, the first thing everybody thinks about is criminal history, right? And we watch TV and all the procedural crime shows. They have a toenail clipping from some suspect, and the next thing you know, they've got this guy's whole life history, his 5th grade kindergarten teacher or his 5th grade teacher, his high school sweetheart, where he went to college, his cellie at Rikers, the whole 9 yards. They've got all this information, boom, right at their fingertips. Well, that was great on TV, but even the federal government really doesn't have that kind of information. In fact, their own criminal records are so incomplete that when the Attorney General was tasked by Congress to evaluate what you hear, the National Criminal Background Check System that the FBI manages under the Department of Justice, they came back and said, our records are crap. They're really incomplete. This is why you hear about people being able to purchase a firearm from a federally licensed firearms dealer when they shouldn't have been able to, because the national criminal database is full of holes. And we still see it all the time. We've got clients who have legitimate access to this. They've already got our background check back where we told them about something and they decided to proceed with the candidate just because, but there was a red flag in the, some criminal history or something, but they're going to proceed with the candidate anyway. So then they go through the fingerprinting and do all the stuff that they need to do to submit a national or a background check through the DOJ. And it gets back and it's empty. There's no record there. And that's just because, the local counties haven't reported it to the states, who then haven't reported it effectively to the federal government. So there's no such thing as a single database. You'll see on background checks a lot that your average private employer runs, something called a national background check or a nationwide or a comprehensive. Anytime you see national, nationwide, or comprehensive, somebody's overselling something, because that doesn't exist in the criminal history realm. Because what's happened is we have a very decentralized system for criminal records in the US. Unlike Canada. In Canada, I can go to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and get a single criminal history on somebody that really covers all of Canada. A few other, some European nations are the same way. The US is not. We are so decentralized. Every county, like I'm here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and we've got a county clerk and a district clerk. And for a long time, the county clerk and the district clerk were on separate computer systems. And even now, their computer records are stored by different team members and different staff and things like that. And then there are other counties in the state of Texas where there's not, you have to go search in the county clerk's office computer system, and you have to walk across the hall to the district clerk's computer system to see the felonies. And imagine that over 3,300 plus counties in the United States. There's not a, getting all of those different computer systems to talk to each other and all of that is just impossible. In fact, here in Texas, the Department of Public Safety has a state criminal records database, a repository of all the criminal records that have been reported to them. And we ran everybody on death row in Texas at the time through DPS's database, because these are people the state has in custody, right? and we ran them all through DPS's criminal history database, and it was missing a third of them. Fortunately, those people aren't out looking for work, but we know from researching all the applicants that we search every day all over the country that in Texas, DPS's database is going to miss a third of all the records. So how do we actually do research? If you're going to do anything reasonably well, what the employer has to do is go work with a background screening company that's going to physically go into the courts and search the live records in each courthouse where that person's lived, worked, or attended school. Our standard at Imperative, and I'll just say right up front, Imperative is kind of a white glove, high service organization that caters to really risk averse clients. And so we don't sell like a, just, $30 over the internet, cheapo background check. So our clients are really paying a premium to get it done well. So we look back at all the jurisdictions in our research that we can associate with that person for the last 10 years. So we're looking if they've lived in, well, in this case, you can see Fort Worth, we check Tarrant County. If they lived in Austin, we check Travis County. They live down in Laredo, we check Webb counties, those live criminal records. And we've in almost every county in the country, because there are a lot of counties that are online, but the online records aren't always fully reliable. So in most places, we've got somebody who physically walks into the courthouse on our behalf and searches those court records. That's the only way to do it very well. So if they lived in Los Angeles, we'll search Los Angeles County, which is a whole giant kind of headache because, just because it's California and they make it hard. But New York or wherever, we're searching the court records all over the country to do that. And so that's where the criminal records really, if you're reliable, come from, because that way you see, and we look back at 10 years, at all the records found in the last 10 years, but legally, and we'll get into this in a bit, but we can report all criminal convictions in all but just a few states. I can tell my employers about all convictions. And so we report everything we see. So often you get on the court's computer system and you may see something 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and we'll still report it. One of the most interesting ones we've ever reported, was in the, probably about 10 years ago or so, we reported what was then about a 40-year-old prostitution charge that we found. And, it's not our job to mitigate, to decide what's relevant for the employer and what's not. And so we reported it, and the employer immediately called me and said, "Mr. Coffey, you made a mistake here. I've met this woman. She's 50 years old, and she's and she's very professional." And I'm like, "Well, yes, sir, but that was like 40. This is she was 21 when this happened." And so he was still alarmed. We pulled ancient court records and were able to demonstrate that, in fact, she had been a dancer as a late teenager, early young adult, I guess, and at a apparently somewhat shady club, and she had laid her hand physically on a police officer, and they arrested her for prostitution. That's the only history in her whole life. They hired her, okay? But that's, we report to our clients everything, and then we do what we can to counsel them to effectively evaluate the information. Also, employers are interested in many cases, not just on your convictions. In most states and under federal law, employers can consider cases that ended in deferred adjudication. They can consider cases that were dismissed. Even the EEOC says employers, you hear this a lot, you can't consider arrest. Well, that's not accurate. Even the EEOC's 2012 guidance on the use of criminal history in making employment decisions says an employer can use an arrest if it's reasonable to believe that person engaged in the conduct. So we have to do additional research sometimes if we come across a case that was dismissed, let's say, and we want to know why it was dismissed and what happened. And then we give that information to the employer, and then they can have the conversation with the applicant and get their side of the story. And then we tell them, come back and we'll try to verify whatever additional details they gave. So you've got context for it. Driving histories are great, and a lot of employers run driving histories even when the person's not going to be operating a motor vehicle. if they're operating a forklift or some sort of machinery, industrial machinery that may be dangerous and you need a high level of safety awareness. A driving history gives you some insight into how this person operates their motor vehicle and what the level of safety awareness that they operate in. And are they a compliant person? Are they somebody who follows the rules, or do they have all these speeding violations, running red lights, stop signs, things like that? That gives you some insight into their behavior. And as I said, past behavior predicts future behavior. So the other thing employers want to do is talk to previous employers. They want to understand, at the minimum, are the things that this candidate told us about their employment history the same as what this employer's records are? Is it accurate? And we see a lot of employees or applicants make the mistake of fudging around their termination date or their hire date to cover gaps in unemployment, because they're afraid that gap in employment will look bad for them. So they kind of fudge here and fudge there. That looks even worse when it's caught, because you just told this employer, I'm a liar. And my advice to employers 100% of the time is, if they lie to you coming in the door, there's no reason to expect their behavior to change after you hire them. And so verifying employment, education, we see a ton of people. We see more people lying about their employment and education history than we see lying about their criminal history, in fact. And then if you say you've got a license, make sure it's up to date and it really is valid, because if we verify that, that it's not valid, then you've got a problem. And same goes for certifications. See a lot of people claiming Microsoft certifications or other kinds of professional certifications that are issued by private bodies that we just go try to verify and find out that they don't have it, or it's not up to date. So again, that how you respond to that stuff, those questions on the application or in an interview, are really important, because if an employer verifies it and it looks like you've been dishonest just a little bit, nobody really wants to hire somebody who's just a little dishonest. Then there's credit reports. I spend most of my time talking employers out of running credit reports, but there are cases where a credit report may be helpful in understanding your a candidate's behavior. So first, you need to know credit reports don't have a score when they're used for employment. So you always hear, my credit score kept me from getting a job. Well, not really, because employers don't see credit scores. If they're pulling credit reports legally and through a legitimate source, they're not getting credit scores. Those FICO scores are designed to help lenders evaluate somebody's ability to repay a loan, not to say this person's responsible or likely to steal from me or anything like that. So they won't share that score with employers. So the only time I really recommend employers use credit are first when they're making fiduciary decisions, financial decisions on behalf of the company or on behalf of customers or clients. So a financial planner, it probably makes sense to look at their credit history. None of this is a black and white, yes, we'll hire them, no, we won't. But it's, hey, this person's got a lot of debt, he's got a lot of items in collections. We got to have that icky conversation with this applicant about what's going on here. And sometimes it's self-evident. You see a bunch of medical debt. And when I see a bunch of medical debt on a credit report, my response to the employer is almost always, if that's the only thing we're seeing here, that's not something you even need to address with the candidate. This person, either they or somebody in their family had some illness, and they're, especially when you see that they're trying to pay, they're paying on it and they're getting it paid down slowly. Quite honestly, it's not job related and probably not a problem. But when you see people who open accounts and run them up and then don't pay them, then open other accounts, run them up and don't pay them, and they're not doing anything to try and pay stuff off, then maybe they filed bankruptcy multiple times over a period of time. all this kind of financial shenanigans. If they're making financial decisions on behalf of me or my clients, that's a red flag for me. I get the question a lot, what about individuals who are handling cash or working with easily removable products, like, working in a warehouse where you can easily carry something out and put it in the trunk of the car or something like that. I think it depends on the organization. It's if an organization has good controls in place, like I know some credit unions and community banks that we have as clients, a lot of them don't run credit reports on tellers because they know they've got the financial controls in place. They'll know immediately if money's missing. They're more concerned about criminal behavior because a lot of financial frauds that are committed against banks, or even bank robberies, are inside jobs where at least somebody's got connections to the people engaging in the bad acts. And so if somebody's got a criminal history that shows some dishonesty and just bad decision making, that could be a red flag for a teller, much more than just having a negative credit history. And then we do have employers who still do employment references. And I'm not talking about just verifying title and dates of hire stuff. I'm talking about an actual reference, an interview, when we're saying, hey, would you rehire this person? Would you recommend them? We've got standard questions we ask for our clients, including, was there ever a reason to question their integrity or their honesty? Did they ever act in a threatening or coercive manner? Things like that. I'm primarily interested in getting that information directly from a supervisor more than a coworker or colleague, because you don't know who that person, somebody says they worked with them at Texas Instruments. How do you know that? Just because they talked and maybe they did work together, but they're just buddies, and this guy's knows his friend is kind of a screw up, but I'm going to help him out. I'm going to say, yeah, he's a great guy. So I'm not sure, personal references, apart from the professional stuff, it's kind of an intelligence test. Is your applicant smart enough to list 3 people who'll say nice things about them? But I don't give that those things a lot of credence, except, unfortunately though, not unfortunately, just the fact is that some employers are required to do it because of regulations, government regulations that just says this is what you've got to do as part of your background check, and you've got to check 3 personal references. So we do them. We rarely get anything negative or particularly useful from those personal reference checks. Every now and then we'll get somebody and say, he listed me, and then they'll throw him under the bus for the next 5 minutes, but that's the exception. And then for especially C-suite positions or positions that really have a lot of financial independence in the organization, civil litigation and liens and judgments, things like that, get checked for those kind of clients. And in fact, we do tons of background checks all over the country for families and family offices that are hiring staff that work with directly with family members of high wealth families, and nannies, housekeepers, drivers, things like that, pilots. And a lot of those in those roles, because they're so risk averse and these people are dealing directly with their family members, they will do civil litigation as well as a full criminal search and everything else, and look to see who sued that person, who's this person sued, what were the circumstances around all of that.
Mike, you mentioned, you're talking about background checks or being able to talk to references. Solomon says, if you're looking at a high-ranking individual like a CEO, how and who do you talk to in that case?
In those cases, it depends on what the client wants, really. If somebody is actually, especially if it's a larger company, we can verify that they were the CEO. Clients rarely want us to do those, because usually at that point, it's a peer-to-peer relationship. And so if they're bringing this person in as an executive at a certain level, they're reaching out through their own networks to talk to their own peers and other people who've worked with them and know them. We do have clients who have us go develop those references, and we'll do that in a variety of ways. If it's a company that the board is publicly known, we can reach out to board members for CEO. Sometimes we can reach out to people who were subordinates, direct reports to the CEO during that person's tenure, and we'll reach out to those folks. And maybe they're there at the company now, or maybe they've left, and we'll try and conduct interviews with them. Now, that is extremely rare, though. I mean, those are the kind of things that most companies don't do through a third party like us. What they're really doing is reaching, they've got their own networks and are reaching out, trying to verify that information.
Great, thank you.
And so let's talk about social media. Back in the day, we had parties. We went to college, we did stuff, and people took pictures. And in some place from the 1980s, one of my old fraternity brothers, I'm sure, has a shoebox full of pictures of me doing really stupid stuff. And I hope that person's house burns down and takes those pictures with them. But they may not, but I hope they never get on social media. But you could do stuff and it didn't follow you. The whole world didn't know every dumb thing you did as a kid or as an adult. But now, a lot of people just post all the stupid stuff they do right on the internet. And the current generation has a lot of their dirty laundry out there. They're getting better at it, though. I talked to, I've got college age kids, but also talked to student groups, local universities about some of this stuff. And I can tell they're more aware of that now, and they're locking their profiles down or just not posting stuff that can come back and bite them. But even if the company has a policy that says we don't do social media checks, somebody's probably doing one when you're coming into the organization. If you're doing a group interview with 3 or 4 of your potential peers, I promise you at least one of those folks is getting on Facebook and looking you up, or Instagram, or they're trying to find and see if you've got anything out there. Just want to know about you. It's just curiosity. And we still have blowback. There was, we had our first, I wrote my first social media policy for an employer. It had to have been 2007 or 8. It was pre-Facebook. And, but somebody had, first day of work, an employee came in, female, and she was introduced to her team in a meeting and people she was going to be working with. And one of her teammates said, yeah, you've got 2 kids and you do, and he knew all this stuff. He had just Googled her and found whatever she had put out on the internet in different places. And she was just mortified, and nothing really negative. She just felt like her privacy had been invaded, but she kind of put it out there. So a lot of employers have policies that say we don't do this, but somebody's going to do it. So the reality is you want to keep your profile clean, locked down. But there are employers who intentionally do check social media, and they've got a process. Hopefully, if they're working with somebody like me, we've helped them put a process in place where when they search social media, the person who's reviewing the social media information is not the person who's making the hiring decision or really has any influence on the hiring decision. And the reason you'd want that is when you're looking at social media, you look at my social media, you see, okay, I'm a white guy over 40, quite a bit over 40 now, and that I practice yoga and I'm non-sectarian. You'll see all the things that I might happen to share out there. And some of that stuff is protected class information, and you don't want the hiring manager to have it so that there's never an allegation that protected class information affected the hiring decision. So you have a firewall, and then the person searching the information should be only identifying things that are red flags that are really directly relevant to the job. But here's why employers care about this stuff. This is Jared Loftner. You may remember he's the shooter who I think killed 6 people and injured 13 or 14 others, including Representative Gabby Giffords. And within an hour of that shooting, the local news had this guy's online manifesto and all the crazy crap he had done online all over the news. Now, this wasn't a workplace shooting, which was, fortunate for some employer, but the fact is if there is some sort of workplace violence or something crazy happens, the employers are going to, if it's out there right there in the public, the employers are going to be or the plaintiff's lawyers at least are going to say the employer should have known about this. It was right there. Why didn't you know? And so to protect themselves and mitigate it against future liability, a lot of employers are doing some sort of structured social media search. And then we saw on January 6th of last year, sometimes it's just a brand reputational thing. We say, we don't want somebody who's an attorney in our law firm or working for our company being all over social media and making political statements that are antithetical to what our customers think. And so that's a professional red flag. Now, if you think it's fair or not fair or whatever else, that's just a reality. And some employers are doing it, and certainly, they're trying to protect their reputation, their brand, and their relationship with their customers. So just be ready to pass the don't hire a freak test. Okay, that's the bottom line. Is a lot of employers aren't as sophisticated as they think they are. And if they come across a photo like this one, and let's say your candidate was the young lady in the background there, and you just see this picture and she's tagged in, and you say, oh yeah, that is her. Then you look at it and you're like, well, who is this? Who she hangs out with? Do I really want to hang out with somebody? Do I really want to hire somebody like that? And so you get especially if you get a more conservative type employer. But then you look deeper at this photo, and if you look deeper, you see that, well, look, if you've ever been to a conference with a showroom for vendors, that's what this looks like. It looks like a big conference area. It looks like there's one of those standard black drapes, that divides the aisles in the background, and even the name of a company on one of those little cards they do. So it may well be that this guy with all the face studs and the giant ring in his earlobe and the spike in his lip is just a paid entertainer, right? He's just somebody that some company hired to have stand at their booth. And this gal thought, hey, this is kind of cool. Check this out. It'll be a funny picture to post on Instagram. Or her friend took it and posted it and tagged her. And it doesn't reflect on her at all. And so I'm constantly trying to encourage employers to think of context. But it's important that you also, as a job seeker, think about how the context may be mistaken in anything you post that's public. So let's talk about your legal rights. Under the federal law, the Fair Credit Reporting Act is the law that protects your rights as what they call a consumer from when an employer is buying information from a third party like Imperative. So what that really boils down to is ignore the word credit, because it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act, but ignore the word credit. It ought to be called the Fair Consumer Reporting Act, because it covers a lot more than credit. Anytime an employer is purchasing information from a third party, whether it's a background screening company, a credit bureau, the work number, the National Student Clearinghouse, which verifies degrees for a lot of higher education institutions, anytime the employer is buying information about an applicant or an employee to use in making an employment-related decision, it's a consumer report, and the FCRA applies. So the main things that are relevant to an applicant are, first of all, generally non-criminal criminal history items, non-conviction criminal history items, and everything else that would be negative can only be reported for 7 years. So a dismissed criminal case, a civil case, even information from an employer saying you were terminated involuntarily is prohibited from consideration after 7 years, unless the position is going to make more than $75,000 a year, in which case everything is reported. So if the person's convictions are reportable forever, and most other items that are negative, if the person is going to make more than $75,000 are reportable forever. And now there are some states that do limit even the use of criminal convictions. California being one, an employer can't legally consider a criminal conviction, and I can't legally tell them about a criminal conviction over 7 years old in California. Now think about that. That sounds on its face very fair, right? 7 years, the year of Jubilee. That's why, you know, we use that number just because it's been a traditional number for forgiving debts and things like that. But you're hiring somebody to work in a nursing home in California. And 8 years ago, they were convicted of sexual assault of a child. Or let's say they were charged with it and it was reduced down to injury to a child. Do you want that person working in your nursing home or working with children or with some other vulnerable population? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the reality is you can't even evaluate whether the information is relevant in California and a few other locations. Madison, Wisconsin limits the reporting of most criminal records to 3 years. So think about that. If you don't have a, you know, you can do all kinds of bad stuff. And so I have education programs that I give to former offenders to help them find meaningful work with a criminal history. And we talk a lot about how to deal with those things. I'll touch on a few of them in a minute, but sometimes I just say when I'm talking to somebody with a significant history, but it's in the past somewhat, but it's still something that raises employers' eyebrows. I'll say, yeah, well, you know, maybe you should consider moving to California. Or how do you feel about really cold winters? Because Madison, Wisconsin's open for business for you. And sometimes that's just, you know, the best route for those folks. But the reality is, in some places, employers just can't consider that information. So the employer under the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act should be disclosing to you before they order it that they're going to run a background check on you. And you know, that you're going to order a consumer report. And there's specific language. And I just did yesterday a webinar for employers on what all of that entails. And it's on our website right now. If you really are interested, you can go to imperativeinfo.com and click on webinars, and all my recent webinars recordings are there. But basically, they should disclose to you. It should be a separate document. So if it's a paper application, it should be a separate piece of paper, or if it's online, it should be a separate, you know, screen on an online thing. It shouldn't just be scrolled, you know, tucked in with a whole bunch of other text in a window on their online applicant tracking system or whatever. They should be disclosing to you that they're going to order a consumer report, and then they should obtain your authorization to do so before they order it. And then if there's any negative information on the background check that comes back and that may adversely impact the hiring decision. So, you know, let's say you said you voluntarily quit a previous position, but when we called that employer, the employer said, no, they were termed involuntarily. And let's just make it worse, that they, while they were being investigated for embezzlement. Okay, so we passed that information to the employer. And now the employer's got this information and they may take action. They may not hire you, or they may hire you. But before they take any negative action, adverse action, they have to give you a copy of the report and a summary of your rights under the federal law. And in the old days, when I started the company, we would mail all these things all over the country for clients. Now it's almost all electronic. You'll get an email, click on a link, log into a secure system, and review your report right there online. But the employer should be doing this. Most employers are pretty good at it now. 10 or 15 years ago, there were a lot of lawsuits about employers not following this process. But now a lot of employers are doing it. And then once you get it, you say, hey, that's not right. I've got the paperwork here that says that this is a voluntary termination, that I wasn't, they've made a mistake of some sort. Well, you have the right under the federal law to dispute the accuracy of the information back to the background screening company. And so we'll get that dispute. We'll pick up the phone, call that previous employer. We'll give them a copy of your dispute, exactly what you said. And then they can look at their records and say, oh, we made a mistake. That's not accurate. Or that person wasn't authorized to say that's not accurate. Our official company policy is only to give this information, or whatever it is. And we'll adjust the report. And if your employer is dealing with a good background screening company, they'll get that done usually the same day if that employer will be responsive, and they'll just jump on it, because none of us want our clients to lose a great candidate, or the candidates to be hanging out there, or even a candidate to lose a position opportunity just because of something that some employer may have made a mistake on. But if the employer ultimately, for whatever reason, decides not to proceed with the candidate, or if it's a current employee, not to give them the certain promotion or to penalize them somehow. Some employers have points systems for their drivers. And so they'll pull the driving history on maybe a semi-annual or an annual basis. They'll look at their driving records and deduct points based on on that criminal history. And so, or not on that traffic violations on their driving history. And so anytime any of that happens, you should get a copy of the report from the front end from the employer. And then if they take any adverse action, they don't hire this person, they fire this person, they deduct points, or they don't give them a promotion, anything employment related, you should get a second notice from the employer that says, hey, we're taking this action based in whole or part on this consumer report that we've provided you previously. And this is how you contact the background screening company if you still want to dispute it or anything, or you just want to punch somebody in the nose. This is how you reach Mike Coffey. And that's the last thing. So that should be the entire process if a background check's costing you a job. Now, sometimes I'll talk to applicants and they'll say, well, I think this previous employer is blackballing me and giving me a really negative reference. But I've never gotten any of these letters. Well, it's possible that previous employer, that the prospective employer is calling the previous employer directly and talking to that supervisor or that manager who's throwing you under the bus, and that it's never coming through a background screening company. And again, all this law applies only in the circumstance where the employer is paying for information from a third party about you. And so if they're just picking up the phone and calling the previous employer directly, or they're walking physically into the courthouse themselves and doing the court research, then none of this applies. But from the applicant's point of view, the rule, it should be no surprises, right? When the background check comes back, there should be no surprises. So what happens a lot is employers ask really kind of lame criminal history questions on their application. So you might see something like this: have you been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years? And so that question, if you've got 15 misdemeanors out there for all kinds of stuff, 2 DWI misdemeanors, sometimes you see 3 or 4 of them and they never convert them to felonies. You see, theft by check, you see all this minor stuff, people on deferred adjudication, all kinds of stuff. But if the application question says, have you been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years, and you haven't, your answer is no. But so what does that mean though, when they get your background check back, if they don't ever ask any other questions, but then they find all this other, stuff in your history, even if it's not relevant to the job, their default is going to be that you were dishonest with them. That's just how they think. And so my advice to folks with anything negative, if you've got an employer out there, that if they get hold of the right former supervisor, they're going to throw you under the bus. Be prepared for that. If there's something on your criminal history that may show up and they haven't asked about it at all, or it hasn't, or their question was too narrow and didn't include that, my advice is always be open and honest with them. Wait till the end of the interview. The interview's gone well, you feel strong, and have that conversation with them. when you do encounter the criminal history question on the employment application, there are a lot of coaches out there, career coaches, that especially those who work with former offenders, who say on the, in response to the criminal history question, have you tell us about any cases that have been filed and a lot of, whatever, all that stuff. If it's a really thorough question or a narrow question, rather than say yes and answer give the information, a lot of these coaches say, right, we'll discuss. Okay, as an employer and as an HR professional, if I see we'll discuss on that question, I'm going to say, no, we're not. We're never going to have that conversation. You're not going to get that chance. I've asked you a legal question that's legal for me to ask in this state, and you've just self-identified to me as somebody who's going to be too clever, who's going to try and skirt the rules, decide when they have to be compliant and when they don't. And I don't care what the offense was. When you say we'll discuss, my mind goes to you killed the HR guy at the last company, but that may not be it. It may be just something dumb that's kind of embarrassing. But you just you refuse to answer a question in our employment application directly and honestly. And so I think we'll discuss on criminal history question or reason for termination. Those you're hurting yourself if you ever put we'll discuss. So as I mentioned earlier, if there's something that may come back that that employer hasn't asked about, but if they call references and check references themselves, or they use their background screening company to do it, or criminal history or whatever, they haven't asked about it, but it's out there. And if it comes up, it may cause them some concern. The best thing you can do is be frank with them and about, hey, this is what happened. And, I really think this interview's gone well. I think I would really thrive at this company. I think I have a lot to contribute, and it would be a great relationship. But there's something you need to know, because if you do the background check as the next step, you'll see that I got this DWI 3 years ago, and I got deferred adjudication on it, and I've completed everything, but I just want you to know it's out there. And you can put it in your own context and tell your story, because what you don't want is me telling your story for the first time that they hear it. Because when I tell the story in the background check, it's black and white. This is the offense. This is the date of the offense. This is the outcome of the case. And there's no context there. It doesn't tell the employer what you've done subsequent to that criminal history incident to better yourself, to demonstrate that you've learned your lesson or whatever. It doesn't put anything in context. And so you don't want the background check being the first time the employer gets that information. So what about that employer who threw you under the bus previously? Okay, or you think will throw you under the bus. And you left that job, maybe involuntarily or maybe voluntarily, but they ask about it. And my answer is always be prepared to talk about it, but be straight with the employer about it. So, if it was just, maybe you worked at a company for quite a while. I see this a lot. So you worked at a company for quite a while, you got a new supervisor. And now you and that new supervisor, for whatever reason, don't get along. It's not a good fit. So be prepared with that answer. Sometimes people come together who just, for whatever reason, and no matter how much they both try, they just can't have a good working relationship. I don't understand what all the human dynamics are, but this is one of those cases where we both tried to make this work and it was just a bad fit. And it was time for me to move on. Having a pre-prepared answer that's not evasive and doesn't lay any blame is the best answer you can have for getting ready to move through anything negative that may show up. But I still think you want to present it to the employer before it comes back on the background check. So what are employers looking at, especially on the criminal history side? How does this information relate to the position? What does this behavior tell me about how this person's going to perform in our role? How long ago was it? What does this applicant's behavior pattern look like compared to all the other applicants? What our own company policies and what insurance policies or regulatory policies are in place to make sure that we that we don't put certain people in certain kinds of roles based on their history. That's what employers are looking for. Employers are not actively out there trying not to hire people. But some employers are more risk averse than others. And I think under the law, that's their right. But most employers are trying to be fair. And I'm constantly pushing that issue with them and doing training around how to fairly and legally evaluate criminal history, how to have conversations with applicants about it. And again, all of that's on our website at imperativinfo.com. Just click on webinars and you'll see the recorded webinars out there. And it's out there for free. Anybody can look at it. But understanding what the employer is interested in and what their considerations are should help you craft your story about why that past incident isn't reflective of who you are today. You can also, if you think it's a position where they're going to pull a credit report, you can get your free credit report from annualcreditreport.com. And annualcreditreport.com is the 3 big credit bureaus together. And you can pull your report annually, once a year, from each one. And so my recommendation to everybody I know is go pull, there's 3 bureaus out there. So every 3 or 4 months, go pull one of them. You can just pull just TransUnion, just Equifax, just Experian, and go through that process of actually reviewing your own credit report at least 3 times a year. Most of them have pretty much the same information as the others, but anything particularly negative is going to get reported to all of them. So you can monitor just to make sure that bad things don't show up that aren't accurate, because you want to know. And then, obviously a lot of the credit cards, and there are other services that'll give you a credit score. And the only time I'd ever worry about my credit score is if I was getting ready to make some sort of financed purchase, and you can go pay for that. But you can get your credit report itself from the bureaus once a year for free. So, and I recommend everybody do that. So I see some stuff in the chat. Let me see if there's questions I can help answer there.
The first question Carlos asked, is it possible for employers to see every post you have on Facebook, even though your settings are only set to friends, so that friends can see them? And second part of that is, can they request Facebook access?
Okay. If something is blocked, if you've got your privacy settings set to not public, so that not anybody can see it, an employer is not going to see that generally, except there's this thing called the Wayback Machine and the Internet Archive, that a lot of stuff that you posted when you were just kind of making everything public gets indexed in there. And so there's a chance that something may show up even though it's not currently publicly available. So you need to just be aware of that. Can an employer ask to see your Facebook, or ask you to friend them, or even just ask for your Facebook password? In most states, they can, but I've never encountered a circumstance, other than in the occasional anecdotal story in the news media, that's happened. I know of no employer who's doing that, with the exception of some employers who have security clearances and are really highly risk averse, and are asking to see things like that. But even then, what they typically do is ask you to sit down and scroll through your feed with them, rather than get a password or anything like that. But they can do that in most places. There's a number of states have passed some rules against it, controlling asking for passwords, but be prepared that it's possible. And so the best thing is, just if you're going to put it in writing, just assume somebody's going to see it. I got a text from someone recently who was getting ready to get a security clearance, and they were filling out the government questionnaire, and it asked about marijuana use. And they texted me, like like I've got some influence on the government's security clearance process, but they texted me, hey, should I, how should I answer this question? Because I smoke, and what should I do about it? How should I answer this question? And I said, well, two things. First of all, tell the truth. And second of all, don't put this in writing. Okay. You just put in writing that your intent is to defraud the government on this form. Don't do that. But so there are some circumstances where I just assume if it's in writing and I've posted it, somebody's going to see it someday. And when they come for me, they'll find the stuff to come for me with. It's out there. So.
All right, Susan asking, you may have already answered this. Is the applicant ever told that they were not hired because of something in their background check? What recourse does the applicant have if there is a mistake in the report, and how would we ever know?
I think we covered that. That employer should be giving you a copy of the report before they make a negative hiring decision if it was a background check purchased through a third party.
Okay. Let's see here. Carlos says, can you briefly go over the difference between a background check and a security clearances? If you have a clean background and a U.S. citizenship, does that almost guarantee chances to obtain a security clearance?
It means the obstacles are going to be lower, certainly, to getting the clearance. The thing about the background check, it just depends on what you call a background check. When the Office of Personnel Management does their background checks related to security clearances, depending on the level of clearance, they're going to talk to associates. They're going to interview roommates or neighbors and stuff like that for some clearances. And so you're still kind of at the mercy of, you may have never had a criminal arrest for marijuana, but if all your neighbors say, yeah, he has a party every Saturday night and there's a mushroom cloud of marijuana smoke coming out of his backyard, then you may have a problem. So just because there's no history, if there's something out there that may bite you, they may well find out.
Okay. Let's see here. When a company checks working history, what do they check? Will they just confirm the working dates, or will they ask performances there?
It really depends on what the employer asks when they call and what that employer will tell them. Some employers will give us good feedback. Probably 40% or around 40% of employers will at least tell us whether you were voluntarily or involuntarily terminated and whether you're eligible for rehire. And then if it's a professional reference or we're calling directly to supervisors and stuff like that, it's amazing. Sometimes what a former supervisor will tell us about stuff. And I tell my clients, make notes during the interview. If this person said that they led it, and this is a true story. This guy said he led a team that saved the company, X number millions of dollars through process improvements in their procurement process. And the employer passed that information on to us. And so during the call with the supervisor, we mentioned that and said, hey, he made this, he was on this, he led this team and blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, what? He was, when that went on, he was an intern. If he was even in those meetings, he was taking notes or just saying he didn't materially contribute. He certainly didn't lead those meetings. So those things happen. But most of the times they're verifying title, dates of employment, maybe eligibility for rehire, and probably 40% of the time, some sort of termination reason.
So and that's really all the questions in the chat window. So a couple questions I have. Can somebody myself as a private citizen, can I come to you all and say, will you run a background check on me so I know what it is? And what would the approximate cost be?
We get those requests a lot. And my answer is almost, well, what's out there. And so, what people are really asking us is, that shit I did, is it going to show up? That's really what they're asking, And so I can tell them, yeah, we'll do a one-time background check for somebody. It runs around $300 on the criminal piece. What we won't do is call previous employers and find out what they're going to say about you or anything like that, because that would usually involve us having to misrepresent what we're doing, and we're never going to do anything that where we're lying to somebody or not being straightforward about what we're doing. But we can do the criminal, and people have us do it, but it's not what and sometimes employees want to do it so that they can show a clean background check. I've heard of employees attaching a clean background check to their resume. I tell every employer who listens to me at a conference or and all our clients, how do you verify that that wasn't doctored? We see applicants with criminal histories who are disputing the criminal history we reported. They will doctor the criminal documents and send them to us. And all we do is turn around and send them to the court clerk and say, hey, they gave us this. It says it was dismissed. And then the court clerk calls us, or the marshal calls us and says, do you know how to find this person? Because they just altered a government document. And so that's not a good idea either.
All right, can you just for a little bit talk a bit? I mean, so you're a very legitimate company that's doing background checks. In the last couple of weeks, I had to fill out a online background thing. They charged me $14. Within 20 seconds, it came back. All right, you have a clean record. You can proceed. Can you talk a little bit about all the cheapy little firms? I mean,
yeah.
And the reason I sort of asked about this is because I was on a call a week ago, and somebody said, to go into a lot of schools nowadays, you can't get into a school even to see your kids if you don't have a background check.
Right.
And some parent, the mother, was told you can't come into the school because you were in Attica and you don't have, because of whatever happened,
Right.
you don't have a left ear or something. And
Yeah.
the lady said, well, obviously I do have my left ear and I've never
Yeah.
have been to Attica. Can you talk about all those?
Yeah. A lot of the things that the school districts are doing or the private entities are doing on trying to massively background check all these people instantly they're just hitting these private databases that are buying the data from all these sources, and they're just full of errors. The court records are full of errors anyway. There's a lot of errors in court records anyway, but when you're getting data from all these different data sets and shoehorning it all into a single database, you got all these different form fields, and they're trying, all these field names, they're trying to do it. Just mistakes happen. And the more they seem to try to apply artificial intelligence to these things, the more it gets screwed up, and the more either they miss obvious records or they report records on the wrong people. And that's what's happening. And so in your case, in a lot of the schools in Texas are just running the Texas Department of Public Safety's records, which are, like I said, are missing a third of the records out there. And it's not going to tell you, hey, there are 2 Jeff Morrises in Texas with the same date of birth, and they're not looking deeper to see do we have any other identifiers, do we have an address match, do we have anything else. And so and Jeff Morris is not an extremely common name, but if you've got Jose Gonzalez or John Smith, there's always going to be somebody with the same date of birth someplace in the country. There's a John Smith probably born every day. So that's what they're dealing with. And so, and there are employers who rely on that level of background check, and they usually will end up getting burned by it. It's just,
I know at one point there were 11, and I'm sure there's probably more. There were 11 Jeff Morrises in the DFW area. 3 of us had very bad credit because I used to get phone calls on a monthly basis of them tracking down those Jeff Morrises. One of us happens to run an oil company. So, you need to Google yourself to know what else is out there and what, because like you said, if I'm going to do an interview with you, I'm going to look at your LinkedIn profile. I'm going to see what shows up on Facebook. I'm going to Google you. So know what's out there about yourself. Very, very important. Yeah.
There was we had a candidate who had a common name, something like April Summer or something like that, and she every application she filled out, she attached a piece of paper saying she wasn't the April Summers who had the same date of birth and a criminal record in wherever it was. And it was a court document that she just included with every application because it consistently came up. And that's just, she's aware of it and she's getting out ahead of it. And then, and I would tell the client, okay, well, that's good to know. She says that we'll verify that document's legit and she's not really the right person. But like I said, if they were all honest, I'd be out of business. So.
One last question here. How do I clean up things posted on the internet, including my address and other personal information?
Not in America, you don't. Europe has a right to be forgotten rule, but you don't have that in the US. And so, but you can reach out to some of those websites as you find that stuff and ask them to take it down, and some will and some won't. But to my knowledge, there's not a way to force that in the US. And somebody sent me a private note, and I'll just say real quick, and it's a long one, but how do you, as an employer, how do you consider the recency, the job relevancy, and privacy issues when looking at criminal history and doing background checks? And I'll say employee, we kind of talked on, the relevancy and those things earlier, but if you're really interested, I've got an hour-long webinar that's recorded on our website called How to Legally and Fairly Evaluate Applicants' Criminal History. And it goes through all of the issues all the things I train employers on. And so you're welcome to go look at that.
All right.
Mike.
Oh, go ahead.
So as you're talking with all these HR groups, all these HR departments, how well do you find that they understand the rules are and what they're supposed to do and that sort of thing?
I find that the organizations that actually have HR departments understand it pretty well at this point. What you see are the small companies that don't really have an HR department. And the president's administrative assistant is also the HR person and just doing the paperwork and all that. And they don't know what, but I will say that our industry, the background screening industry, has gotten a lot better over the last 10 or 15 years and constantly training our clients on how to do stuff. I've always been big on the education side, but we were for a long time kind of the unique CRA, Consumer Reporting Agency, that spent a lot of time on that. But so many of the big guys have gotten sued because their clients were doing stupid stuff and they were getting dragged into the lawsuits. And so now it's a lot more common. And you see it at HR conferences. If it's somebody who's plugged into the HR world and they're going to conferences and stuff, I mean, I'm doing one this afternoon. I did a webinar yesterday. I'm in San Antonio next week to speak to a conference about this stuff. So it's becoming a lot more, it's out there a lot more than it used to be. But again, smaller companies are just less sophisticated HR departments.
One other question. So I was part of a company that had 3 downsizing. On the 3rd downsizing, in order to stop managers from hiring people back, which they were doing because the work needed to be done, et cetera, they started marking everybody that they fired and laid off as not eligible for rehire. So should I address this in advance to somebody who says, well, if you're going to check with my previous company, you're going to find out that they said not eligible for rehire?
Yeah, I would. And what I would say is that, their policy is if you've been terminated, even if it was a RIF, they won't hire you back. And so if you ask that question, I would ask them, I would suggest, if you're telling that to the employer, I'd suggest you go ahead and confirm with them that that's their policy, because my understanding is that's what they're going to do. And what you really want to, in the conversation, just, as an employer and as an HR guy, what you want to avoid is making it sound like you've got a grudge against that company because they've got a stupid policy. And it's more of okay, this is just what their policy is, and this is how they do it. And I'm just trying to be helpful here so you understand the context of what's going on.
I don't even know if they can find the record. They're the 3rd company now down the road.
Yeah.
And so I'm not
All
sure.
right, just one last question here, because I know I don't want to take any more of your time up. SK asked, do most background checks ask for the candidate's social security number? I don't like to give mine out because I had my identity stolen several years ago.
Yeah, in order to, the very first step in doing the background check is running your identity information through a database that comes from credit bureaus and a whole bunch of other sources. And it's just consumer reference stuff. It's big data about you, but it confirms that name and date of birth and social that you gave us matches the records in all these commercial transactions. So it kind of corroborates that you are who you say you are. So yeah, and I've got news for you. I hate to say it, but your information's out there already. It's a matter of time before somebody starts using it. So, you know, to the extent that you can, the better, the best answer is to limit the number of accounts you have so that you can monitor them more closely and notice and pull your credit report regularly, things like that.
Yeah, if you have a calendar, I recommend that, you know, every 4 months, go select one of the credit reports, and so that every year you're rotating through all 3 of them and you get an idea of what's going on.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, Mike, thank you very, very much. Great information. I know one of the things I want to ask from you is, how do you have you and the slides next to you? Because doing all these presentations, I'm going to have to offline. I'll send you an email because I want to find out how you did this.
Yeah, it's a great little tool called Prezi, Prezi, and I like it a lot better than just being slides and my little tiny talking head up there. So,
Right.
And I do it looking like I look, and I'm happy doing it. If I looked as good as you, Jeff, I mean, I would have it, you know, all over. Yeah. So there
Well,
you
I'll
go.
have to show you. There's also a Zoom way to do this too, so you can put yourself on top of a Zoom slide. So,
Oh, I need to do that. Okay, cool.
yeah, I may have to, yeah.
We'll trade information.
So, well, Mike, thank you very, very much. Just great information. It's, you know, I know everybody here, when they get hired, is going to have to go through a background check. Mike's company does the good ones. Hopefully, when you get hired, if you're running an HR department, you'll start using his business, his service, because you know you're going to get the real thing, not those, you know, $14 checks like everybody else goes through. So, Mike, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Also, be sure to check out his website. He's got some great webinars that are on there. He does a lot of great podcasts and a lot of great information if you want more detail on a lot of different HR subjects. So just really, really good information. So thank you very, very much.
Have a great one. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. All right. Next week, our speaker is going to be PJ Dunn. We're going to talk about Clifton strengths and core clarity. So please join us next week. That'll be next Friday at 9:30. If you have not put your introductions into the Zoom chat window, please do so. Please put your information so I know you were here, so I can, you'll get a copy of the roster that goes out this afternoon. Please put all your information in there. We'd really, really appreciate it. That way I can count you here. All right, Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. In fact, next week, I'll be doing 5 days a week, because next Monday, I'll be at the Fort Worth Career Search Network at 9 o'clock. I'll be on Zoom. You're welcome to join How to Find Career DFW, how to find out about Career DFW, Career USA, and I'll talk about the 4 main areas of your job search that you need to focus on. So you're welcome to join us next Monday at 9 o'clock. Next Tuesday, LinkedIn Tuesdays, Terry Sullivan will be with us. How to create a LinkedIn brand that tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you can help. The event will not be recorded, so you will not be able to view it after the event. So if you'd like to watch it, you do need to watch him. And Terry talks fast, and he shares a lot of information. So just be ready to keep your ears open and focus in. Next Wednesday, Interviewing Wednesdays, be able to watch an actual practice interview. Join us next Wednesday for that. And then next Thursday, Interview Thursday. It's the 3rd Thursday of the month. Our speaker is Aaron Alzett. He is the managing partner of a recruiting firm, Next Step Recruiting, and he's going to share what he knows and what he sees. He sees hundreds of resumes every week, and he's going to talk about, you know, the good, the bad, and what he sees and what he likes. So please, please, please join us next Thursday for that. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, click on playlist. Every video that I upload, I will add to the playlist. I will pick a playlist that it goes on to. This one will go to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group speakers. And then don't click on the video, but down below where it says View Full Playlist, click where you see that red arrow, and up will come a list of all the different, oh, look at that, the very top one there from February 12th of 20, oh, how about that? A year ago tomorrow, Mike Coffey was with us talking about background checks. So you can see his presentation from last year, but today's will be up there, and it'll take a couple hours for YouTube to get it processed. So thank you for joining us today. Don't forget about Valentine's Day next Monday. If you haven't, go shopping, do what you need to do so you'll be around on Tuesday. So everybody have a great week and we have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather today. It'll be a beautiful day to get out. And we will see you all next week.